The God from the Machine by Rudyard Kipling. Narrated by Robin Nixon. Hit a man and help a woman, and you can't be far wrong anyways. Maxims of Private Mulvaney. The Inexpressibles gave a ball. They borrowed a 7-pounder from the gunners and wreathed it with laurels and made the dancing floor plate glass and provided a supper, the like of which had never been eaten before, and set 2 sentries at the door of the room to hold the trays of programme cards. My friend, Private Mulvaney, was one of the sentries, because he was the tallest man in the regiment. When the dance was fairly started, the sentries were released, and Private Mulvaney went to curry favour with the mess sergeant in charge of the supper. Whether the mess sergeant gave or Mulvaney took, I cannot say. All that I'm certain of is that at supper time I found Mulvaney with Private Otheris, 2/3 of a ham, a loaf of bread, half a patty de foie gras, and 2 magnums of champagne, sitting on the roof of my carriage. As I came up, I heard him saying, "Praise be, a dance doesn't come as often as orderly room, or by this and that, Otheris, me son. I would be the disgrace of the regiment instead of the brightest jewel in its crown." "Hang the colonel's pet nuisance," said Otheris. "But what makes you curse your rations? This here fizzy stuff's good enough." "Stuff, you uncivilised pagan. 'Tis champagne we're drinking now. 'Tisn't that I'm sick again. 'Tis this square stuff with the little bits of black leather in it. I misdoubt I'll be distressingly sick with it in the morning. What is it?" "Goose liver," I said, climbing on the top of the carriage, for I knew that it was better to sit out with Mulvaney than to dance many dances. "Goose liver, is it?" said Mulvaney. "Faith, I'm thinking them that makes it would do better to cut up the colonel. He carries a power of liver under his right arm when the days are warm and the nights chill. It would give him tons and tons of liver. 'Tis he says so. I'm all liver today," says he, and with that he orders me 10 days CB for as mild a drink as ever a great sodger between his teeth. "That was when he wanted for to wash himself in the fort ditch," Otheris explained. "Said there was too much beer in the barrack water butts for a God-fearing man. You was lucky in getting off with what you did, Mulvaney." "Say you so? Now I'm persuaded I was cruel hard-traded sin for what I've done for the likes of him in the days when me eyes were wider open than they are now. Man alive, for the colonel to whip me on a peg in that way. Me that have saved the reputation 10 times better than a man than him. 'Twas nefarious, and that means a power of evil." "Never mind the nefariousness," I said. "Whose reputation did you save?" "More as a pity, 'twasn't me own, but I took more trouble with it than of it was. 'Twas just me way missing what was no business of mine here now." He settled himself at ease on the top of the carriage. "I'll tell you all about it. Of course, I will name no names, for there's one that's an officer's lady now that was in it, and no more will I name places, for a man is thracked by a place." "Aye, said Otheris lazily, "but this is a mixed story what's coming. Once upon a time, as the churly books say, I was a recruity." "Was you, vow?" said Otheris. "Now that's extraordinary." "Otheris," says Mulvaney, "if you open them lips of yours again, I will, save on your presence, sir, take you by the slack of your trousers and heave you." Mum," said Otheris, "what happened when you was a recruity?" "I was a better recruity than you ever was, or will be, but that's neither here nor there. Then I became a man, and the devil of a man I was 15 years ago. They called me Buck Mulvaney in them days, and begad I took a woman's eye. I did that." "Otheris, you scrub, what you sniggering at? Do you misdoubt me?" "Devil a doubt," said Otheris, "but I've heard summat like that before." Mulvaney dismissed the impertinence with a lofty wave of his hand, and continued. "And the officers of the regiment I was in them days was officers, grand men, with a manner on 'em, and a way with 'em such as not made these days. All but one of the captains. A bad drill, a weak voice and a limp leg, them 3 things are the signs of a bad man. You bear that in mind, Otheris, me son." And the colonel of the regiment had a daughter, one of them, lamb-like, bleating, "Pick me up and carry me or I'll die, girls," such as was made for the natural prey of men like the captain, who was everlasting paying court to her, though the colonel, he said time and over, "Keep out of the brute's way, me dear," but he never had the heart for to send her away from the trouble, being as he was a widower, and she was their one child. "Stop a minute, Mulvaney," said I. "How in the world did you come to know these things?" "How did I come?" said Mulvaney with a scornful grunt. "Because I'm turned during the Queen's pleasure to a lamp of wood, looking out straight forninst me, with a candelabrum in me hand for you to pick your cards out of. Must I not see nor feel? Of course I do. Of course I do. Up me back, and in me boots, or the short hair of the neck. That's where I keep me eyes when I'm on duty and the regular ones are fixed. No, take me word for it, sir. Everything and a great deal more is known in the regiment. Or what would be the use of a mess sergeant or a sergeant's wife doing wet nurse to a major's baby? To resume, he was a bad drill, was this captain, a rotten bad drill. And when first I ran me eye over him, I says to myself, my militia bantam, I says, my cock of a gosport dunghill. 'Twas from Portsmouth he came to us. There's combs to be cut, says I, and by the grace of God, 'tis Terence Mulvaney will cut them. So he went minowdering and menandering and blandering and rhining about the colonel's daughter, and she, poor innocent, looking at him like a commissariat's bullock looks at the company cook. He's a dirty little scrub of a black moustache, and he twisted and turned every word he used as if he found it too sweet for a spit. Yeah, he was a tricky man, and a liar by nature. Some are born so. He was one. I know he was over his belt in money borrowed from natives, besides a lot of other matters which, in regard to your present, sir, I will obliterate. A little of what I knew, the colonel knew, for he would have none of him, and that I'm thinking, by what happened afterward, the captain knew. One day, being mortal idle, or they would never have tried it, the regiment gave amateur theatricals, orfices and orfices' ladies. You've seen the likes time and again, sir, and poor fun 'tis them that sit in the back row and stamp with their boots for the honour of the regiment. I was told off for to shift the scenes, hauling up this and dragging down that. Light work it was, with lashings of beer and the girl that dressed the orifices' ladies. But she died in Agra, 12 years gone, and my tongue's getting the better of me. They was acting a plaything called Sweethearts, which you may have heard of. And the colonel's daughter, she was a lady's maid. The captain was a boy called Broom. Spread Broom was his name in the play. Then I saw had come out in the acting what I never saw before, and that was that he was no gentleman. They was too much together, them two. A whispering behind the scenes I shifted, and some of what they said I heard, for I was death blue, death and ivy on the comb cutting. He was everlastingly oppressing her to fall in with some sneaking scheme of his, and she was trying to stand out against him, but not as though she was setting her will. I wonder nigh in them days that my ears did not grow a yard on me head with a listening. But I looked straight for an instant me, and hauled up this and dragged down that, such as was my duty, and the officers' ladies says one to another, thinking I was out of listening reach. For what an obliging young man is this Corporal Mulvaney? I was a corporal then. I was reduced afterward, but no matter. I was a corporal once. Well, this Sweethearts business went on, like most amateur theatricals, and barred what I suspicioned, 'twasn't till the dress rehearsal that I saw for certain that them two, he the blackguard, and she no wiser than she should have been, had put up an evasion. What? Said I. Evasion, what you call an elopement? Evasion, I calls it, because accepting when 'tis right and natural and proper, 'tis wrong and dirty to steal a man's one child. She's not knowing her own mind. There was a sergeant in the commissariat who set my face upon evasions. I'll tell you about that. Stick to the blooming captains, Mulvaney, said Ortheris. Commissariat sergeants is low. Mulvaney accepted the amendment and went on. And I knew the colonel was no fool, any more than me, for I was held the smartest man in the regiment, and the colonel was the best officer commanding in Asia. So what he said and I said was a mortal truth. We knew that the captain was bad, but for reasons which I have already obliterated, I knew more than me the colonel. I would have rolled out his face with the butt of me gun before permitting of him to steal the girl. Sains knew if he would have married her, and if he didn't, she would have been in great torment and the devil of a scandal. But I never struck, never raised me hand, and me superior officer, and that was a miracle, now I come to consider it. Mulvaney, the dawn's rising, said Ortheris, and we're now nearer home than we was at the beginning. Lend me your pouch, mine's all dust. Mulvaney pitched his pouch over, and filled his pipe afresh. So the dress rehearsal came to an end, and because I was curious, I stayed behind when the scene shifting was ended, and I should have been in barracks lying as flat as a toad under a painted cottage thing. They was talking in whispers, and she was shivering and gasping like a fresh hooked fish. Are you sure you've got the hang of the manoeuvres? Says he, or words to that effect, as the court-martial says. Sure as death, says she. But I misdoubt 'tis cruel hard on me father. Damn your father, says he, or anyways, 'twas what he thought. The arrangement is as clear as mud. Jungie will drive the carriage after all's over, and you come to the station, cool and easy, in the time for a 2 o'clock train, where I'll be with your kit. Faith, thinks I to myself, Then there's ire in the business too. A powerful bad thing is a ire. Don't you never have any truck with one? Then he began sithering and all, and the officers and officers ladies left, and they put out the lights. To explain the theory of the flight, as they say at Muscree, you must understand that after this sweetheart's nonsense was ended, there was another little bit of a play called Couples, some kind of couple or another. The girl was acting in this, but not the man. I suspicioned he'd go to the station with the girl's kit at the end of the first piece. 'Twas the kit that flustered me, for I knew, for a captain to go a traipsing about the Emperor, with the Lord knew what to have a trousseau in his arm was nefarious, and would be far worse than easing the flag so far as the talk afterward went. Hold on, Mulvaney. What's trousseau? Said Ortheris. You're an uncivilised man, me son. When a girl's married, all her kit and accoutrements are trousseau, which means a wedding portion, and 'tis the same when she's running away, even with the biggest blackguard on the army list. So I made me plan of campaign. The Colonel's house was a good 2 miles away. Dennis, says I to me colour sergeant, have you, love me, lend me your kyart, for me heart is broke and me feet is sore with tramping to and from this foolishness of the gaff. And Dennis lanted with a ramping, stamping red stallion in the shafts. When they was all settled down to their sweethearts for the first scene, which was a long one, I slips outside and into the cart. Mother of heaven, but I made that horse walk. And we came to the Colonel's compound as the devil went through Athlone in standing leaps. There was no one there excepting the servants, and I went round the back and found the girl's aya. You black brazen Jezebel, says I, selling your master's honour for 5 rupees. I'll pack up all of Miss Sahib's kit and look sloppy. Captain Sahib's order, says I. Going to the station we are, I says, and with that I laid me finger to me nose and looked the shamin' sinner I was. But Archie, says she, so I knew she was in the business, and I piled up all the sweet talk I've ever learned in the bazaars onto this she-bullock, and prayed of her to put all the quick she knew into the thing. While she packed, I stood outside and sweated, for I wanted for to shift the second scene. I tell you, a young girl's evasion means as much baggage as a regiment on the line of march. The saints help Dennis's springs, thinks I, as I bundled the stuff into the trap, for I left no mercy. I'm coming too, says the ayah. No, you don't, says I. Later, Petchy. You beto, where you are. I'll Petchy come and bring you, sart. Come along with me, you marauding. Never mind what I call her. Then I went for the gaff, and by the special order of Providence, for I was doing a good work, you'll understand, and then the springs held tight. Now, when the captain goes for the kit, thinks I, he'll be troubled. At the end of Sweethearts, off the captain runs in his cart to the Colonel's house and sits down on the steps and laughs. Once and again I slipped on to see how the little piece was going, and when it was near ending, I stepped out all among the carriages and sings out very softly, "A jungie." Well, that the carriage began to move, and I waved the driver. "Hither-o," says I, and he hither-o till I judged he was at a proper distance, and then I took him fair and square between the eyes, all I knew, for good or bad, and he dropped with a guggle like the canteen beer engine when it's running low. Then I ran to the cart and took out all the kit and piled it in the carriage, the sweat running down my face in drops. "Go home," says I to the says. "You'll find a man close here. Very sick he is. Take him away. And have you ever say one word about what you've decoed, I'll marry you till your own wife won't sum you who you are." Then I heard the stamping of feet at the end of the play, and I ran to let down the curtain. When they all came out, the girl tried to hide herself behind one of the pillars and says, "Jungie," in a voice that wouldn't have scared a hare. I ran over to Jungie's carriage and took up the lazy little horse blanket on the box, wrapped my head and the rest of me in it, and drove up to where she was. "Miss Sahib," says I, "going to the station?" "Captain Sahib's order." And without a sign she jumped in, all among her own kit. I laid tea and drove like steam to the Colonel's house before the Colonel was there, and she screamed, and I thought she was going off. Out comes the ayah, saying all sorts of things about the captain having come for their kit and gone to the station. "Take out the luggage, you devil," says I, "or I'll murder you." The lights of the traps people coming from the gaff was showing across the parade ground, and by this and that, the way them two women worked at the bundles and trunks was a caution. I was dying to help, but seeing I didn't want to be known, I sat with a blanket round me and coughed, and thanked the saints there was no moon that night. When all was in the house again, I never asked for a bucksheesh, but drove tremendous in the opposite way from the other carriage and put out the lights. Presently I saw a nigger man wallowing in the road. I slipped down before I got to him, for I suspicion Providence was with me all through the night. 'Twas Jungie, his nose smashed in flat, old sick as you please. Dennis's man must have tilted him out the trap. When he came to, "Hut," says I, but he began to howl. "Ye black lump of dirt," I says, "is this the way you drive your Gary? That ticker has been owing all fair owing all over the blooming country this whole blooming night, and ye as much wuller as Davis sow. Get up, ye hog, says I, louder, for I heard the wheels of a trap in the dark. Get up and light your lamps or you'll be run into. This was on the road to the railway station. Of what the devil is this? Says the captain's voice in the dark, and I could judge he was in a lather of rage. Gary driver here. Drunk, sir, says I. I found this Gary straying about the cantonments, and now I find him. Oh, says the captain, what's his name? I stooped down and pretended to listen. He says his name's Jungie, sir, says I. Hold me horse, says the captain to his man, and with that he gets down with his whip and lays into Jungie, just mad with rage and swearing like the scut he was. I thought, after a while, he would kill the man, so I says, Stop, sir, or you'll murder him. That drew all his fire on me, and he cursed me into blazes and out again. I stood to attention and saluted. Sir, says I, and every man in this world has his rights. I'm thinking that more than one would be beaten to a jelly for this night's work. That never came off at all, sir, as you see. Now, thinks I to myself, Terence Mulvaney, you've cut your own throat, for he'll strike, and you'll knock him down for the good of his soul on your own everlasting disgrace. But the captain never said a single word. He choked where he stood, and then he went into his trap, without saying good night, and I went back to barracks. And then, said O'Therris and I together, that was all, said Mulvaney. Never another word did I hear of the whole thing. All I know is that there was no evasion, and that's what I wanted. Now, I put it to you, sir, as 10 days CB a fit and proper treatment for a man who has behaved as me. Well, anyhow, said O'Therris, 'twere this here colonel's daughter, and you was blazing coped when you tried to wash in the fort ditch. That, said Mulvaney, finishing the champagne, is a superfluous and impertinent observation.